Hello and welcome to Tomlin's Harmonica Podcast, where I'll be hanging out with players and teachers and having conversations loosely based around harmonica. This week's guest is a fantastic harmonica player, performer, and songwriter. Having given up a career as a software engineer to become a musician, he's gone on to develop a unique style blending classic West Coast Blues Harmonica with traditional Indian music. He is the inimitable Aki Kumar. Welcome to the podcast, Aki. How are you doing?
How you doing? I'm doing all right. Doing all right.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
It's still a little bit early for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I'll get used to it. You seem like a pleasant fellow.
I will try to maintain that for the course of our conversation. So for people who don't know whereabouts you're based, where are you currently?
San Jose, California.
Awesome. And what's it? I'm getting straight into the COVID chat, but what's it like there at the moment?
Most things are shut down. It's still kind of in semi-quarantine. Grocery stores are open and some other businesses are open, but you can't get a haircut, and bars are closed for good reason. But this is what they call the San Francisco Bay Area,
mm-hmm.
and it's been mostly okay as far as people following protocol and stuff as compared to the rest of the Wild West in the United States. So we're doing all right. I mean, my case in particular, I'm here with my wife in our place in San Jose, and we're doing okay. So far, so good.
Nice. So you've not got back to gigging in actual venues yet, have you?
No, and I don't plan to. There have been some offers coming in from here and there. Some venues have kind of made an attempt at opening, half opening, kind of opening with a distant stage. But to me, I'm not quite comfortable yet. I mean, not that there are that many gigs. I'm talking one a month maybe at best. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I'm mentally ready to go out and start performing and all that just yet.
Do you know what? It's sad that that's how you feel, but I'm also really happy to meet someone else who feels like that, because I'm still in quite nervous mode. I haven't been in the same room with my band for 4 months, and I've got the itch. But I'm also
it's difficult. It's a difficult decision to make, really, because the pressure of this industry can cause you to kind of take some limited risks, if I can call it that, like measured risks. So for instance, no, I don't gig, but and this podcast is a one-on-one live thing, so it's different, but there have been live streams where I kind of have to do it, and I often have to call either a guitar player, a friend of mine, or somebody I've been playing with for years, but I have to make this decision that, okay, at this point we're gonna be in a space like this, and I'm hoping that guy's also following protocol and not hanging out on the beach all day with 1,000 other people. So there's that limited context of interaction as a musician, but the larger context of having to go out and then potentially face a larger number of people who you do not know, and you don't want to. At least I don't want to be out there spreading anything or receiving anything just yet.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I watched the duo gig that you did for Sony Music India on Facebook, and it was really good. And I know I sound surprised. I'm not surprised that it was.
No, please.
The thing that surprised me, it wasn't the quality of the music is kind of. I'm expecting that. But what was cool is it felt very intimate for a listener. I felt like you were sitting with me and playing and telling me stories and giving me some context. And that was something that I haven't experienced in a club or like a proper venue ever. So that was kind of special.
Well, good. I'm glad it felt that way. I've been trying to keep a lot of these, broadcast live streams in that spirit. I think it's important for people to feel that, because they're kind of locked down at home, and you almost want to, at least I, in my head, I want to deliver something that's like a house concert, like I was in their living room playing for them. That's what I want to go for. So I'm glad you felt that way, man.
No, I really enjoyed it, and I've kind of asked everyone whether, you know, lockdown is shit. That's a given. But has it been a good opportunity to work on new things that you maybe didn't have time to before?
The lockdown period, you mean?
Yeah.
This period? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, shoot, I'm working on drums. I'm like a complete rank amateur beginner drummer, but man, I'm a good one. I've just been banging on those drums for 3 months and just trying to, work on some real fundamental technique so I can hopefully be of service to this little music scene here once we come out of this, and I'm working on songwriting. I've just started to get over my fear of tendonitis and started to play guitar as well. I mean, right there is a lot of practice hours a day for no particular reason, just frivolous, goals from like 20 years ago that I'm trying to fulfill in some way. And then there's all the other stuff that I'm doing, setting up audio recording, which I've not done. A lot of video stuff, learning how to connect a phone to a computer and then another phone and trying this stuff called OBS. And it's like every day is a learning experience. And how to frame myself on camera and not
Hmm.
have too much back. Everything is a learning experience because the context has changed. I'm no longer on stage. There's no longer an interactive audience. Even when you do a live stream, you kind of have to visualize an audience out there to keep to sustain your energy levels.
Mm.
Otherwise, it's very easy to kind of just lose steam and just do a flat performance, which I don't want to do. So yeah, man. I mean, I could go on and on. It's actually been a period of growth for me, and I'm very, I should say, privileged that I can enjoy this while this moment in time exists.
It's really funny that you should say that because I had a realization about 6 weeks ago when people were talking about the potential for coming out of lockdown, and obviously we're still quite a way off coming out of it properly, but I felt guilty because I didn't want to come out of lockdown because, like you, this has been such a positive experience in terms of I've started playing keyboard, so that's a new thing I've started learning. So I'm a complete beginner on keyboard, like you're a complete beginner on drums, and started chromatic harmonica. The thing that really piqued my interest is you mentioned tendonitis, fear of tendonitis. I need to delve deeper down this because I used to be a guitarist and I got tendonitis in both my wrists and had to stop, and that's why I started playing harmonica. So is there a similar story in your
Um,
history?
Nothing. I don't know what the specific reason would be, but as you mentioned earlier, my previous career was a software engineer, and I wasn't like an executive or anything. I was a programmer. I would sit, my butt down in front of a computer screen for 12 to 14 hours a day and write code. And you do that for a decade or more. You develop bad posture and some bad habits. I also I don't know. It may have just been a long-standing injury. I've tried to play tennis over the years, and it hasn't worked out because of tennis elbow. I played foosball for years, and it was probably a bad thing to do. That added to the tendonitis. So over the years, I've had this issue where it came down to like in my early 30s, there was a span of a few weeks where I couldn't even hold the bullet microphone in my
Wow.
hand. I had to give up my gigs because that's how bad it got. So in my head, I've always been like, no chance, I'm not going to play guitar. I want to, but it's not going to happen. And now that I have this period of time, this indefinite period of time, I'm thinking, well, okay, if I do get injured, let's say in a small way. I mean, it's not that I'm being irresponsible, but let's say I hurt my wrist. At least I have a week or two to recover and no gigs to lose because of it. So that's where that's where my head's at with regard to the tendonitis.
Fair, fair. Yeah, it's computers are a wonderful thing, but they've definitely kind of impacted. I used to be a web designer, so I totally get the kind of sitting in
Yeah.
front of a computer all day and what it does to you.
Yeah.
it physically and
Yeah.
emotionally.
Yeah, it does. In fact, one of the reasons for the switch and where I had to say I'm not going back to that world was because I was mentally drained at the end of
Mhm.
these work. It's not easy to commit yourself mentally more than anything to problem solving and then come out at the other end and be all fresh and creative and musical. And that's another aspect of that life.
Definitely. Oh, that's definitely something I wanted to talk about. But I want to go back a couple of steps just to kind of the origin story, because you were born in Mumbai, weren't you?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Mumbai.
Excellent. And did you come from a musical family?
Not a musical family in the sense that any of my, family members are musicians, but my parents in particular, they love listening to music. So they were consumers of
Hmm.
music in different ways. And I know, like, if my mom had the privilege and opportunity or access to proper music education or the luxury of pursuing a career, she probably would have taken a stab at it because I know she's got a musical spirit. So there was a musical context
Hmm.
in within the family, although we weren't musicians.
And did you get started on other instruments when you were younger before you discovered harmonica?
Yeah. I don't know if it's before because my dad had this Chinese tremolo harmonica. It's almost like I don't know why this tradition exists in India. Probably ties to some of the older Bollywood songs that have had harmonica. But and there was a famous movie in the 70s called Sholay that had this really classic chromatic harmonica line. Not that anyone knew it was chromatic. So we had these tremolo harmonicas, probably cheap ones. My dad had one. He would try to play, and I know I've over the years tried to play the same harp.
Hmm.
So there was that, an instrument. But when I was about 9 years old, 10 years old, my school had started, offering musical instruction, just in like a beginner course in traditional Indian music for kids, and that's where I got my first uh, exposure to harmonium. So that's going to be a keyboard and a little bit of tabla for about a month. So I had dabbled in, I was a child, but I still
Hmm.
knew what this instrumentation was and what a scale was, what a flat note was as a result of that, what a four count is. Those concepts kind of came in early because of that one course I took, and they kind of stuck with me.
That's cool. And so, like, when was the moment when you started kind of realizing that harmonica and kind of diatonic harmonica was the thing for you? When did that happen?
I didn't even know what a diatonic harmonica was. As I said, that I when I started playing that tremolo harp, like I was a teenager at that point, and I realized, oh, there's notes that are not there, and this is not a complete instrument. And then I remember listening to Bluesbreakers. Like there's a lot of uh, Brit blues.
Hmm.
John Mayall, he had an album where he plays a Rice Miller, "Bye Bye Birdie," I think. That was another moment where I went, "Holy moly, what is this? I don't know what this is. I didn't even know about Rice Miller. I just thought this guy just made this song up." That was another very clear moment where I wanted to play the diatonics. So yeah, there were like many moments over the span of a year or two where I decided to reassess my opinion of the diatonic harmonic.
Very cool. It's that was something that I was struggling to piece together from kind of various bios that I read of you. I wasn't sure if you actually had worked as a software engineer or if you just kind of moved over and then you were instantly brought over to the dark side and became a musician. Uh,
No,
there was a little bit more time?
a
Uh,
lot more
yeah.
time. Yeah, because my whole entire purpose of being in the United States was to be a software engineer.
Hmm.
And that was also how I was going to stay in the United States. That was my only access to a visa, a work visa. So that's what I did. And I had no intention of jeopardizing that in any way. So I was a good software engineer for many years, and did music. Kind of started taking lessons with David Barrett on the side, uh, with no expectations other than let's see if I can get better at doing something. Um, and from then on, when I realized how much I loved doing that, that's when the dark side started to, reshape my brain a little bit. And
Very
but
cool.
I worked as a software engineer for 12 years, so
Wow.
that's not just a short span of time. It's been a long journey.
Yeah, no, that's a serious chunk of time.
Yeah,
And I mean, I'm very, very jealous at you having such an amazing mentor in David Barrett.
yeah,
Like that must have been quite fundamental in
yeah,
everything.
yeah. And it's easy to get spoiled when you have access to like a resource like that. But that said, I knew very quickly that he was a special instructor because we all going through schooling, and we have been exposed to teachers over the years. You have different teachers and different teachers in different contexts and different subjects and all that. This guy is probably the best one I've ever, had the pleasure of working with, and it was very apparent very quickly. So it wasn't that I felt like it was like it's a drag, man. I got to go to these harmonica lessons, and I really don't want to do. It was never like that because I always felt excited about going to a David Barrett lesson, and we did one lesson a month, so it was paced,
Hmm.
quite comfortably for me because I couldn't take on a lot. With a guy like Barrett, he's such a deep instructor that he could give you 5 minutes of wisdom, and then you spend 6 months trying to just chase that little tidbit of technical, wisdom he shared with you. So there was a lot of work that went in there. But yeah, I'm very honored that I got to sit, 3 feet from him and listen to his tone and his technique because he's got incredibly sophisticated technique. And I'm saying this is somebody that's listened to pretty much all of the great traditional contemporary harp players perform. He's got some of the best technique in the world. And when you get to experience that firsthand, not over Skype or through a video or just firsthand feel that energy, it motivates you differently and you want to be that, you want to chase that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's just one of the most natural teachers. He clearly is desperate to teach
Yeah,
whatever it is. It doesn't matter what the topic is. If he
yeah,
notices that he can help you in any way, like I
yeah,
picked him up from the airport when he was doing a workshop here, and like I said something really offhand about harmonica microphones, like, oh, I've never been able to cup a bullet, my hands are too small, and he's just like, let me show you. And like within 5 minutes, he's shown me how to do it. It's like he's not made my hands any bigger, but he's just fixed it. And
yep,
he's just got this desire.
yep.
It's very powerful.
And it's not just, from what I understand, he teaches martial arts too, and I would bet he's just as good at that, instructing people in that context and on that subject as he is with blues and harmonica.
Yeah. No, he's one of a kind. And yeah,
Yeah,
seeing him on stage was quite an amazing experience because you listen to recordings of people and it always sounds great. And then you hear it on stage and it can still sound great, but there's maybe a slight rough edge around it. It's not there with David. He's just
no,
so smooth
no,
all the time.
legit. Yep.
And did you work with Gary Smith as well?
Not directly, but I just chatted with Gary very not too long ago, and I was trying to tell him that, look, I know David is one of my teachers, like, but you are my teacher as well. You just don't know about it, because the other cool thing for me was that I could take lessons from Dave, but I could go watch Gary live because he was still doing gigs back then, and that's another experience, being 6 feet away from Gary Smith's amp, and man, that's some of the greatest harmonica tone you'll ever hear. And he's such a cool cat, so humble, and conducts his show with just this air of coolness,
Mm-hmm.
another level of inspiration, another kind of inspiration. So Gary is a teacher, like in the back of my head, if I try to hit this fat two-draw bend, I know 10 times out of 10, I am subconsciously trying to be like Gary. And I'm
Yeah.
never going to be, because he can get that tone out of a microphone and an amp. And I'm saying this very objectively. I have, my tone is okay. It doesn't stink. So most times I'm confident to go up on stage and play someone's rig and feel like this is going to be okay. It's not going to suck. But if you do that standing next to Gary and he's played the same rig, then it's almost always cause for embarrassment, because he just manages to milk this like 40 to 50% extra tone. And tone is like this magic metric that I'm just, you can't really capture it. But you know what I mean, that deep sound, that big sound. He's got the hands and he's got the technique, and I just respect him a lot.
No doubt. It's funny. I have a lot of students who kind of come and say, I bought a Fender Bassman, I bought a vintage Bassman, and I got the same microphone that this guy uses, and I got this and I want to learn about tone. How do I set the amp? I'm like, you put the microphone down and you practice with your hands.
Yeah. That's where it's at. That's where it's at, in the hands.
Absolutely. Something I wanted to ask you about, because I was chatting to Hank Shreve last week in the podcast, and we were kind of talking about that difference between the kind of West Coast blues player sound and kind of further east, and that there's definitely a kind of swingy kind of feel, really laid back thing. Where do you think that comes from?
I don't know specifically, but I do know that a lot of West Coast blues gets associated. Now, there was a thriving Oakland scene, for instance, and a thriving LA blues scene, and we're going back, 70, 80 years, and these were black scenes,
Mm-hmm.
top of the line musicians, transplants from other states, kind of like with the Chicago thing. Folks from the Delta moving. So the West Coast had its own blues scene, but in more recent times, I think, disciples of some of these great musicians. So folks like on the harmonica, you could say, guys like William Clark and Rod Piazza, who followed that George Smith path and style of playing. They kind of redefined this West Coast sound on the harp, and they definitely went for that swing sound.
Mm-hmm.
Was that George Smith inspired? I'm not sure, but that's like almost a definitive West Coast feel that a lot of the harp players chase. And obviously some of that is, I've incorporated that consciously or not in my playing, especially when I'm doing third position.
Mm-hmm.
That's different from like William Clark or Rod. But speaking of West Coast players, you have Kim Wilson. That's also someone from the same region, but he has a different vibe, different style. So the reality is, it just probably depends on what an individual player chooses to pursue. You could be sitting here in California and try to be a Sonny Terry stylist, but does that make you a not West Coast player?
Sure.
So I think those regional styles have started. I mean, they've been blurred for a while now, and I've been to Chicago, and I know players there that play more like William Clark than I'll ever hear over here,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of funny, right? So yeah, I don't know what to say specifically about that, but I do know that as far as for me, the West Coast context is very heavily defined by those two cats like William Clark and Rod Piazza.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And also the thing that I was kind of noticing when I went to see Rick Estrin play, and then I was watching the kind of behind the scenes footage of you guys recording It Takes Three, and I'm noticing Kid Anderson is everywhere, and
Oh yeah.
So I feel like there must be some musicians that are kind of, they're members of bands that are jumping between different players, and that must be setting a lot of the sound as well.
Right. So definitely, when you have those kinds of entities, and Rick is another one of these guys. He's a He's an established legend here on the West Coast. And they have a style, and that style becomes very commonplace where people like the next generation, people like me, are trying to pursue that style, chase that sound. Then you develop a musical culture, as you say. Entire bands start to play like that, and then you can hire another guitar player on another day, and chances are they know the same songbook and they know the same style and the same feel. So there is definitely a culture around that. Yes, you're right.
And do you find that you're kind of working on being that sort of traditional player, kind of very tongue block centric, and not kind of bringing in the kind of slightly more modern, like overblow styles? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Maybe it's musical preference. Maybe it's laziness. Maybe it's convenience. I don't know quite sure. Maybe it's a combination of all these things. But the reality is, for me, I've never been. I've always been like a minimalist, like less is more kind of guy. So if I had 5 minutes today and you said, "Hey, work on something on the harmonica," I want to try to play like Big Walter. That's just where my head's at. I love guys who can play overblows smoothly, where it's like guys like Grunling, for instance. You don't even realize when he sneaks one in, and it's part of his, his playing just as much as an octave, for instance, would be. But that's never really been like a technical desire of mine, because I would much rather play a stronger, toneful, more accessible note. That's where my time would be better spent for me. And it's the same with speed playing. I've just never wanted to chase more notes in a shorter period of time. I've wanted to get the most out of one note. And this is pure taste. This is not right or wrong, but that's where my head's at.
But I think it's really important for other harmonica players to hear that, because I think the thing that I've noticed is with the internet and the kind of the rise of scholarship around everything, every topic that you can think of, people are getting more scholarly about it. They're learning about the kind of all the different facets and the extremes, and so almost every harmonica player fairly early on in their journey nowadays is hearing about overblows and Jason Ritchie, and they're thinking that that's kind of the logical progression of what they need to be working on. And so it's really nice to realize that there are kind of players who are refining the kind of more traditional techniques and really enriching it and working on that tone. Because really what's going to get an audience excited is not whether you can hit that flat third in the upper octave, it's whether everything you're playing is sounding fat.
That's where it's at. I mean, you just nailed it. Does it sound fat? And that kind of defines tone. And you don't need to have an amplifier or a microphone for that. Some of the best performances I have had the privilege of witnessing have been by harmonica players that just played acoustic to a room that just went silent, because there was so much depth and weight to their tone. And not one audience member would have at that point gone, well, he didn't play an overblow, so I'm not quite sure if that. And just to address this, this modern context of people seeking out advanced techniques early on in their playing, this information was perfectly accessible to me as well. I'm kind of like, I started playing in 2004, so it was pre-YouTube, but we knew what overblows were, and everybody knew how to play them. And Jason was coming through the Bay Area blues route, twice a year. So I got to see Jason live very early in my playing days, and it just devastated me. It almost made me cry to watch him. He's like a bad example for someone starting out to try to pursue, because I don't think people realize how much work that man has put in.
Hmm.
to be as good as he is. That those overblows don't define Jason's style. There's a lot more to what he's doing than just one or two techniques. And the fact is, this is not stated enough. He can play the hell out of the acoustic harp without any contraptions,
Yeah.
and he can play just as tastefully without ever hitting an overblow. So those are more important aspects of his playing for me, as a student. And so that's the thing is, it really comes down to taste. What sound lies in your head? What is it that you're chasing? It's true for me. When you talk about drums as well, I don't want to play the world's greatest drum solo, but I do want to play the world's fattest blues shuffle.
Hmm.
That I know. So am I going to invest my time just learning this or just this? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think when I think about musicians I want to play with, the drummer who wants to take tons of solos, like my favorite drummer who I work with, whenever I give him the nod to take a solo, like I might get a fill. That's it. There'll be just like a 2 or 3 beat fill, and he's like, "Nope, I'm good.
Oh,
I want
good.
to lay down the law."
That's it, man. That's where it's at.
Definitely. I got to say, like you were kind of downplaying your fat tone in kind of when thinking about Gary Smith, and like this is kind of a big deal for me talking to you, because It Takes Three is one of my favorite harmonica albums ever, and I don't think there's nobody on that album who I'm thinking, who invited this guy? Like everyone there sounds like super fat, and it's all about the tone and the tasteful licks, and the bends being so perfectly in tune. And I don't know, like it's such a great album, which
It was a big deal. It was. Thank you. I'm really happy that you like that album. I was very, to be honest, I wasn't sure-footed uh, when I walked into that studio because it was intimidating. This was 6 years ago. I had just been a year into playing, professionally. So where I
Mhm.
had, in my head, redefined myself as, okay, no longer software engineer boy trying to play harp. This is what you do. Now go make something of it. And then to be invited by the very guys that you've kind of tried to emulate, and they're giving me the seal of approval. They're saying you're legit. We want you on this project. It's a special project. It's 3 generations. But in my head, I was like, what am I gonna play today that they haven't already played before, or they don't already play better than me before? And it was very terrifying at the time. But now that I look back, I realize I actually had a unique voice. I just didn't
Mhm.
realize it then because I was so caught up in trying to emulate my idols. So now, 6 years later or whatever, I feel much differently, much more differently about that record.
Mhm.
I'm very happy that it's out there in the world.
Yeah, no, it's a great one, and this kind of takes me in sort of like the next path of stuff I want to chat to you about, because I think it sounds like when you started being a professional musician, you were being the kind of traditionalist, and you weren't kind of saying, "Look, I have this Indian heritage." You were trying to do the West Coast blues guy. I'm assuming you were kind of playing all the standards, and were you
Yeah,
singing in English as well?
yeah, all the
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
So how did you make that transition? Why did you make that transition? Which obviously was the perfect decision, but how did that come about?
Many, many reasons. The reason to be traditionalist at the time was that was the context I was given.
Hmm.
In as far as instruction, having David Barrett is going to kind of ground you in that traditional style of playing, no matter what. And my tastes had already, musical listening preferences were already in that realm,
Hmm.
where I wanted to listen more to Muddy Waters over time than to even more rock, like Paul Butterfield, who I just adore, and was one of the first albums I kind of learned, front to back, just learned every song, every solo. But over time, I decided that what I liked more traditional blues. I was also noticing there's a very distinct division between blues traditionalists and more rock blues players. I'm not talking harmonica, just in the blues world. There's like two factions.
Yeah.
And I, at the time, in my because it was early days for me, I had picked my tribe. And now I look at all of it very differently. But back then I had picked my tribe, and I thought this was the right tribe because this was more closely associated with real blues. It was a foolish thought at the time, but that's why I chose to be like that. You know, kind of that's the scene, man. You know, that's what the audience wants, to give them what you want. And the good thing was I was very good at it, and I still am. Most people, even Indians, don't realize that I'm Indian. They almost get blown away these days if they watch me doing like a little Walter song and then I come out with some Bollywood stuff, and there's like this, you can watch their faces just, they're like, why is this guy from Louisiana singing my favorite Hindi song? They don't realize it, which is a win for me in some ways. But the reason for the transition was uh, uh, I think Trump was one of the driving factors, because the change in the political climate in around I was starting to happen in 2014. 2015 was when the poison started to permeate through our culture, and that's when I started to see what the scene really was. I mean, outside of the context of blues, and I started to self-assess and go, what am I? Who am I? What am I saying? Who am I saying this to? And once you ask those questions, you have to kind of, or at least I wanted to more closely associate my art with me, instead of trying to emulate something that was perhaps slightly more of an alien culture. So that's, the reason for the start of it. Very specifically for why I did the Bollywood Blues project was because of this gentleman named Jim Pugh, who runs this great nonprofit music label called Little Village Foundation. And he's kind of like an A&R guy, where he goes out and finds unsigned artists who have something interesting to say in the folk, blues, Americana, whatever, in that realm of traditional music. And I got to know Jim through the whole Greaseland and San Jose West Coast scene, because he started, Jim has been around for eternity. But we had a chat one day, and he said, "Hey, what are you working on these days?" And I said, "Well, I want to do this project, taking Indian songs and making them blues, putting blues into them." And he said, "Okay." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, this is a cool idea. Let's do it." And I was like, "Okay, this guy is crazy. This project is crazy. I'm going to get laughed at by the blues people here, and people in India are going to totally, send me into permanent exile. I will never be allowed back into India for ruining these classics." That's not how it turned out, and only good and great things have come out of that whole project. And I'm very pleased to say I'm much more sure-footed now about who I am, what I'm saying, why I should say it. And it may be that 5 years down the line, I'm doing something different, but I know it'll be something true to my spirit. It won't be, I won't be faking anything, and I won't be trying to represent something that I don't really believe in.
Yeah. No, I've really enjoyed kind of getting to know some of your playing and performing, and this amazing combination, because it's not just that you're singing in Hindi and sometimes rapping, which I thought was great. I saw your recent single. It was absolutely brilliant. Great video as well. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But you've also kind of captured some of the tonal quality. There are these kind of big vocal harmonies that kind of feel very Bollywood, and it's not just I'm doing a blues song in Hindi. You've really mashed it together really nicely.
Well, I'll tell you what, specifically about the harmonies, since you bring that up, they are, older Bollywood songs had melodies that were very inspired by R&B.
Okay.
And even if there were harmonies in those old Bollywood songs, I would bet that whoever was composing back then was listening to doo-wop and rock and roll from the United States. And I love that whole realm and that genre of music. So those harmonies are almost like instinctive to me. I listen to the melody and I go, we got to put a harmony here. And it's probably because of this song that's a context in my head. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that.
No, that's really interesting. What are the difficulties? What were the difficulties of kind of making those Bollywood songs fit in that kind of more rock and roll blues context?
I'll give you two song examples where it was completely like a no-brainer to redefine the song. There are certain songs from the 50s and 60s in Bollywood that are straight up blues and swing numbers. There's one called inimitable, and if you haven't seen this, check it out. There's like a video of me doing it live, or a couple of videos.
Okay.
But it's almost like Louis Prima Bollywood style, right? Mm-hmm. And I would bet that the guy was paying tribute to Louis Prima. He was, probably doing that very explicitly. So when you cover a song like that, there's no issues. You can take a West Coast band, like, guys like Kid Anderson, who are amazing, already phenomenal players, and they listen to this and they go, oh, I know what to do with this. And, you get the right treatment. But on my Hindi Man Blues album, there's another song that's an old Bollywood song, and I can send you the exact spelling of this title, but it's called Sajan Re Jhoot Mat Bolo, which means my dear friend, don't lie to me. And it's a deep song with really deep lyrics. I listened to that many times over. I mean, I grew up with that song, so it wasn't like I had to go listen to it. But when I had to recontextualize it, I said, what vibe do I want to capture when I do this? And the first thing that came to mind was this Bo Diddley feel, was the boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 na 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 boom, da na na. Now that kind of thing. That took like a minute to kind of put together, and then we had to try it out. And when we did, it was like, okay, now this works. So that song, it took some work. There's other Bollywood songs that you have to understand that it's not just the song in the musical context itself. The Bollywood productions are entire visual productions, so there's a whole music video. So when the song gets composed, there's interludes and that are specifically written for choreography or drama that is, takes place around that song. The song is defining a context within the movie, where for the next scene to follow. Mm-hmm. So the good thing is I grew up with these songs, so I know what these interludes are and what they're doing. So whether I choose to keep them or not is my call, and it's a very quick one. In my head, I'm kind of, I'm not working with unfamiliar songs. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like being a DJ, where you slice and dice and take this and take that out and put something, I'll leave that in, or go, this is a cool part that'll really work on harp. So there's no really one size fits all method. It just comes down to the song and what I want to do with it.
Very cool. Well, I mean, it does sound so natural. And it doesn't sound like a gimmick. You know how, like, if you could quite easily, if someone described it like blues and Bollywood, it could sound a bit gimmicky, but it feels so natural, and it's just so compelling to listen to. I really enjoy listening to it. It's
cool,
very
man.
Cool. So. Yeah, sorry, I've lost my train of thought very briefly.
That's all right. Welcome to my life.
I wanted to ask you about how your career is going in India, because I was looking at your YouTube videos, and the number of views that some of your recent singles have been getting are kind of astronomical, and like nobody in the blues world gets that number of views. Right. So. What's happening? How's it going?
It's a good question. I ask myself that question every day, especially this year. This has been a very, very strange year. The Sony music deal was really awesome because it just fell into my lap. Their A&R people were looking for Indian talent doing some newer things. They were going in newer directions, and they found me on YouTube or Spotify. I'm not sure what, but when they approached me, I told them, look, I don't know what you think I do, but I I'm going to keep doing this because I play blues and I write songs around that sound. So if you think I'm going to do some electronic stuff or more contemporary pop stuff, I'm sure there's great guys who can do that. I'm not the guy. And they were okay with that. They said, do your thing. We won't stop you. So it kind of opened up this whole market for me. And my new album, it's actually out. I haven't officially announced it. It's on YouTube for anyone who wants to listen. It's a 7-song kind of a mini album, a mix of originals and covers. But they just, it's out there, and it's classified as Indian pop, which is hilarious to me because, it's just blues, man, to me. It's like different flavors of blues. And I think no matter what comes of this, this will be a huge milestone for me personally to have been able to open this market to the sounds that you and I both love, and hopefully folks tuning into this podcast love, and sell it as pop in 2020 to a market that has, it's probably 60 years detached from that style of music. So there's that. And I also did my first tour of India last, beginning of this year, right before the pandemic hit. And so that was a very fulfilling thing because I never thought I'd go back to India as a musician and take my band from the US and be able to play different cities and stuff. So that was great. The downside bummer with the whole shutdown for me as far as career goes is, I can't follow up to this Sony music album with another tour just yet. So how that plays out, I don't know. It's great to have 1 million views on something and have, a younger generation of Indians just writing you and saying great things about what you're doing without even realizing your blues influences. They just like the songs for what they are, which makes me very happy.
That's very cool. It'd be interesting to see kind of how it plays out, because I imagine that the kind of the experience of working with a big label in a kind of pop context, I'm assuming that there are expectations and kind of pathways that they want you to go down of promotional tours to help sell things and numbers of albums.
Well, so here's the thing that's changed is things have become extremely digital now. So with a label like Sony, everything's digital. There's no physical albums anymore, and for good reason. No one's playing CDs. Vinyl is kind of making a resurgence, but really in the Indian market, no one's buying vinyl either, as far as I say numerically, to be profitable. So a lot of this has been done digitally, and which is why, going back to this whole live streaming thing, my promotional things for Sony are live streaming little mini concerts from home instead of being out there in India doing it in person. Today at 5 a.m. I gotta stay up, so I've started drinking coffee early. I have to do a live stream with a FM radio station in India, so I'm not sure that I would physically have to be there. If I can, figure out how to be a reasonably good virtual presence, then that's how I'm going to carry forward with my promotion for this album.
Very cool. It comes right back round to what we were talking about at the beginning, just how everything is transforming so quickly. And yeah, if you can maintain that kind of live feel digitally, that's going to be fantastic. I know a lot of people won't believe that it's possible, but I think that there is just as much value in that kind of intimacy of the live performance online.
I have a green screen now, so anything's possible.
Awesome. Oh man, that's very cool. I can't wait to see you performing from the
Sony thing,
venues.
the Sony thing was a brick wall behind me, and most people think I did it in the backyard, but it was done right here. So already, like it's much more easier to take even the same video, the same song, and just recontextualize it and change the vibe completely. And just by adding or subtracting a visual element, you can change the audience's expectations. And this is something I'm learning as I go along. But it's fact. It's just where things are.
Yeah, Absolutely. Well, yeah, no, that's an interesting new avenue to explore. I'm very mindful of taking up too much of your time. I'm really, really thankful for spending this time with you today. Before we wrap up, is there anything new that you want to be promoting, or anything that you want me to direct people to? I've been taking notes for the show notes, so anything you've mentioned will be linked up.
Sure. Well, I mean, you can always send folks to my website, which is akikumar.com. And, they can follow me on Instagram. I have a Facebook fan page. Those are good, places to go find me. And like I said, the new album on Sony Music is out. I'm extremely proud of it because the original songs I wrote are in Hindi, and some of them are in Hindi and English, but I really put in some effort into songwriting and composing and arranging, and it's all blues, country, very roots. Mm-hmm. And I hope folks who like even Little Walter enjoy it, like the same style presented in different contexts. I would really urge people to go check it out.
I would reiterate that. I think it's fantastic stuff, really, really enjoyable to listen to, and really entertaining videos for the singles that I've seen so far. So I'll link up a bunch of stuff that I've been watching, and it sounds great. So thank you so much. This has been really wonderful. I've enjoyed chatting to you.
Likewise.
And I've calmed down a little bit. I was super excited about chatting to you.
Good.
Excellent. Well, take it easy, and hopefully we'll see each other in person before too long, when we can
on
travel
the other
again.
side. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
I look forward to hearing you play soon.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Tomlin's Harmonica Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your podcast player of choice. Join me next Monday for the next episode. Happy harping!